Stop fighting God's plan. 5 things that happen when you truly put God first. There comes a moment in life when your soul gets tired of the noise, when the striving, the endless reaching, the proving, and the pretending finally wear thin. And in that silence, that aching quiet, something inside of you whispers, there has to be more. You've done everything you were supposed to do. You've chased the goals, built the plans, played the part. But even in your victories, there's a hollow ache, a longing that success can't silence, and comfort can't cure. It's not depression, it's divine discontent. It's your spirit remembering that it was made for something higher. Because the truth is, until God is first, nothing else will ever fall into place. We can build empires and still feel empty. We can hold everything we thought we wanted and still feel lost. That's not failure, that's mercy. That's God showing you that the life you've been building without Him can't hold the weight of your soul. When you finally stop running and turn your face toward Him, everything changes. Not in a small, gradual way, but in a holy upheaval, the kind that rearranges your heart, rewires your mind, and redefines what matters. You start to see your life differently. The things you once clung to don't hold the same power anymore. The people, the plans, the approval, they start to fade in importance, and slowly, beautifully, your heart begins to make room for something deeper. Putting God first isn't a slogan or a Sunday saying. It's a breaking, a releasing, a realignment of your entire being. It's when you stop trying to make God fit into your plans and start asking Him to write the plan Himself. And here's the truth most people don't talk about. When you truly put God first, your life won't stay the same. You'll lose things. You'll outgrow people. You'll walk away from comfort. But in return, you'll gain something the world can't give and can never take away. Peace, purpose, and presence. This is the sacred exchange. You give Him everything, and He gives you Himself. And once you've tasted that kind of love, that kind of freedom, that kind of power, you'll never want to go back to a life without it. So if you're standing at that crossroads, weary, searching, maybe a little scared, this is your invitation to let go of control and let God lead. Because when you truly put Him first, you'll never be the same. 1. Your priorities begin to shift. Heaven becomes home. When God takes the throne of your heart, everything you once thought was important begins to lose its shine. It's not that you stop caring, it's that you start seeing. You realize how temporary everything here really is. The things you used to chase, success, approval, comfort, begin to feel so small compared to eternity. Suddenly, you're not measuring your life by what you've achieved, but by how close you are to Him. The applause of people no longer fills you. The validation you once craved starts to feel hollow. You begin to hunger for what can't be bought: peace, purpose, presence, truth. It's strange because from the outside, nothing may look different. You still go to work, you still care for your family, you still live your life, but inside there's a quiet shift, a holy realignment. Your spirit starts leaning heavenward. You start asking different questions. Instead of how can I get ahead, you begin to ask, how can I honor God in this? Instead of what do I want, you whisper, what does He want for me? And in that shift, you begin to see your life was never meant to be about climbing ladders, but about carrying light. When you put God first, the pressure to prove yourself begins to break. You no longer have to perform to be loved, because you already are. You no longer need to grasp for worth, because He's already called you His own. That truth frees you, not just in your spirit, but in your daily living. You'll find yourself being drawn to things you never noticed before: quiet mornings with scripture, worship in the car, moments of gratitude that move you to tears. You'll notice that gossip loses its appeal, comparison stops controlling you. You'll stop running after attention, because His attention is enough. And here's the beauty: your priorities won't just change, your desires will be transformed. You'll start wanting what He wants. You'll find joy in obedience. You'll crave purity over popularity, holiness over hype. You'll look at this world and realize this isn't home, heaven is. Your heart begins to beat to a different rhythm, one not set by the culture, but by the Creator. You'll catch yourself thinking about eternity in the middle of ordinary days. Even pain starts to look different, not as punishment, but as preparation.
Because when heaven becomes your home, earth stops being your anchor. You live lighter, freer, more surrendered. You love deeper because you finally understand what love truly is. You give more, not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. Everything changes, not because you're trying harder, but because His Spirit is renewing your mind. That's the miracle of putting God first. He doesn't just rearrange your schedule, He transforms your soul. And when your heart belongs to heaven, this world can't shake you anymore. You walk through storms with peace. You face loss with hope. You live not for applause, but for that one day when you'll hear Him say, "Well done, my child. Welcome home."
2. Your faith is tested, but it's also strengthened. When you put God first, don't expect the road to suddenly become smooth. Expect it to become sacred, because faith isn't proven on mountaintops. It's forged in valleys. The moment you truly surrender, life doesn't always get easier. Sometimes it feels like the storms grow stronger, but this time you face them differently, not with panic, but with purpose. You begin to realize that God isn't testing you to destroy you. He's refining you to reveal Himself in you. There will be seasons where you'll wonder if He's still there. Prayers will seem to echo back in silence. Doors will close. People will walk away. And you'll find yourself asking, "Lord, I put you first. Why does it hurt so much?" But in that question, something beautiful happens. Your dependence deepens. You stop relying on what you see and start trusting in who He is. You learn to walk by faith, not feelings. You begin to understand that sometimes God hides in the silence to grow your trust in His presence. Every believer who has ever truly put God first has walked through a season that felt like breaking. Abraham had to climb a mountain with his promise on the altar. Job lost everything but refused to curse God. Peter sank in the waves before he learned to keep his eyes on Jesus. Their faith wasn't destroyed, it was purified. And the same will happen to you, because true faith isn't the absence of struggle, it's choosing to believe in the middle of it. It's waking up each day saying, "Even if I don't understand, I will still trust you." That's what strengthens you. That's what matures you. The testing of your faith exposes what's shallow, so God can build something unshakable. He strips away what's weak so His strength can be seen through you. And when you look back, you realize that the very pain that made you question Him was the same pain that made you closer to Him. There's a kind of faith that only grows in the dark, the kind that knows God is still good even when life isn't, the kind that prays when there's no answer, the kind that praises when the heart is heavy, the kind that stands firm when everything else is falling apart. You'll find that through every hardship your roots go deeper. You'll notice that you don't panic as easily anymore because you've seen what happens when you put everything in His hands. You'll realize that faith doesn't always fix the fire. Sometimes it carries you through it. And here's the beautiful paradox. The very moments that once broke you will become the foundation of your testimony. The tears you cried in secret will become your worship in public. The battles you fought in silence will become stories of His faithfulness. Because when your faith is tested, it's not just being stretched, it's being strengthened. God is teaching you to trust not in what you can do, but in who He is. And when the storm finally passes, when you stand on the other side breathless but still standing, you'll whisper through the tears, "Lord, you were there all along." You'll know then your faith isn't fragile anymore. It's fire-tested, heaven-forged, eternal. And the next time life shakes, you won't crumble, you'll worship. Because you've learned that even when everything changes, your God never does. 3. You discover freedom in surrender, true peace at last. There comes a moment when your hands finally open, after all the clenching, all the gripping, all the fighting to hold life together. You just let go. And in that surrender, you find something you never knew you were missing. Peace. Not the kind the world gives, temporary, fragile, dependent on circumstances, but the kind that sits deep in your chest, unmoved by what's happening around you. A stillness that doesn't make sense to anyone else, because it's not from this world. Surrender isn't giving up, it's giving in to the one who already holds the story. It's not losing control, it's realizing you never had it in the first place. It's saying, "God, I trust you even when I don't understand you." For so long you tried to be strong. You carried the weight of outcomes, the burden of perfection, the illusion of control. But when you truly put God first, you begin to release all of that. You stop trying to manipulate every detail and start trusting the one who designs them. You'll notice it first in your heart. The tension starts to ease. The constant need to fix, to prove, to predict begins to fade. You start waking up not with anxiety about what might happen, but with peace that whatever happens, you're held. Because surrender doesn't mean passivity. It means partnership. It means aligning your heart with heaven's rhythm, working, walking, trusting in step with the Spirit.
You no longer feel the need to force doors open because you trust that what's meant for you won't require you to break yourself to get it. And when you finally stop striving, something sacred happens. You start hearing his voice more clearly. The noise of worry quiets. The chaos inside begins to still. You find rest in his presence because you're no longer trying to outrun it. The world calls surrender weakness, but in the kingdom, it's power. It's where miracles are born, where peace replaces panic, where healing begins. Because when your heart lets go of control, God finally has room to move. He starts to reorder your steps, gently, purposefully. He begins to show you that the things you thought were losses were really lessons. The closed doors were protection. The delays were preparation. Every no was guiding you to a greater yes. You'll begin to look back at what used to keep you up at night and smile, not because it didn't hurt, but because now you can see his hand in it all. You'll realize that the same God who held you in your confusion was leading you toward peace all along. There's freedom in knowing you don't have to be the one holding it all together. There's peace in realizing it's not your job to understand everything, only to trust. There's joy in living surrendered, because you finally see that God's will is not meant to restrict you, it's meant to release you. When you put God first, surrender stops being scary, it becomes sacred. You stop fearing what's ahead because you know who's already there. You start breathing easier, loving deeper, walking lighter, and even when life shifts again, you remain steady, not because life is predictable, but because your peace no longer depends on it. That's the kind of peace Jesus promised, not as the world gives, but as only he can give, a peace that wraps around you like a quiet strength, a peace that lets you rest, even when the storm still rages, a peace that says it is well, because he is here, and once you taste that peace, once you live in that freedom of surrender, you'll never want to go back to the life where you had to carry everything alone, because now you know, real strength begins where your striving ends, and in the stillness of surrender, you finally find the peace your soul has always been searching for.
4. You become a vessel. God begins to use you powerfully. When God becomes first in your life, something begins to shift deep within you, a holy stirring, a quiet calling. You start to realize that your life was never meant to be about accumulation, but about assignment, not about what you can get from God, but about what he can do through you. The more space you give him, the more he fills it. The more you surrender, the more he moves. And before you even realize it, you're walking in moments you could have never orchestrated on your own. You've become a vessel, not perfect, not polished, but available. That's all he's ever needed. Not the most talented, not the most qualified, just the most willing. Because God doesn't look for flawless people, he looks for surrendered hearts. He uses ordinary lives to display extraordinary grace. When you put him first, your desires start to shift from Lord bless me to Lord use me. You stop praying for comfort and start praying for calling. You stop chasing recognition and start pursuing obedience, because you begin to understand that real purpose is never about spotlight, it's about service. You'll notice how he starts to place people in your path who need what he's placed inside you. A conversation, a prayer, a quiet act of kindness, things that may seem small to you, but in his hands, they become eternal. That's how he works. Through your willingness, he writes his story. There will be moments when you'll feel unworthy, when you'll wonder how God could possibly use someone with your past, your flaws, your mistakes, but that's the beauty of grace. He's not limited by what you've done. He's glorified through what he redeems. Your scars become testimonies. Your brokenness becomes the very vessel his light shines through. Moses stuttered. David failed. Peter denied. Paul persecuted. Yet each of them was used mightily, not because they were perfect, but because they said yes when God called their name. You can too. As you begin to walk with him, your perspective changes. Ministry stops being a stage and becomes a lifestyle. You start to see every moment as divine, every encounter, every challenge, every opportunity. You carry his presence into places that need his love most. Sometimes it'll look small, a word of encouragement to a weary friend, a prayer whispered over someone who didn't even ask. Other times, it'll feel impossible, stepping into something far beyond your strength. But that's where his power shows up, because he never asked you to be capable, he asked you to be willing. And as you continue walking in obedience, something incredible happens. You realize that the more he uses you, the less it's about you. You stop needing credit, applause, or validation. You find joy in simply being part of what he's doing.
You begin to live for his well done, instead of the world's well liked. Your hands once clenched around your own plans, now open to his will. Your mouth becomes an instrument of truth. Your heart becomes a channel for his compassion. You begin to glow with a quiet light that draws others, not to you but to him. That's what it means to be a vessel. It's not glamorous, it's not always easy, but it's holy, it's purposeful, it's powerful, because when the creator of the universe chooses to work through you, your life stops being ordinary and becomes eternal. And you'll start to see, every pain had purpose, every delay had direction, every detour had destiny. He was shaping you, refining you, preparing you, not just for your own sake, but so that your story could become someone else's survival guide. This is what happens when you truly put God first. He turns your surrender into service, your weakness into witness, your ordinary days into divine appointments. You stop living for success and start living for significance, and through it all you'll whisper with trembling gratitude, "Lord, I'm not much, but I'm yours." And that's when heaven leans in and says, "That's all I ever needed."
5. You realize God was all you needed all along. There comes a point in your walk with God when everything you once thought you needed fades into the background. The applause, the plans, the people, the dreams, all the things you once built your identity around, they lose their weight, not because they were bad, but because they were never meant to fill the space that only He can occupy. When you put God first and stay there long enough, you begin to see the truth with a clarity that almost breaks you. He was all you needed all along. You realize that every longing you ever had was really a longing for Him. Every pursuit, every relationship, every success was an echo of the deeper hunger, to be known, loved, and complete in Him. And when that revelation finally settles in your soul, it changes everything. You stop searching for love in places that leave you empty. You stop striving to prove your worth in a world that's constantly shifting its standards. You stop grasping for things that can't last, because now your heart has found its anchor. There's a stillness that comes when you understand this. You wake up and realize you're not chasing anymore. You're resting. You're not begging for doors to open. You're trusting that the ones meant for you never closed. You're not pleading for validation because you already have the love of the one who formed you. It's almost paradoxical. The more you lose, the more you find. The more stripped away you become, the richer your spirit feels, because when everything else fades, His presence remains. And in that presence, there is fullness of joy, of peace, of life itself. You start to see His fingerprints everywhere, in the laughter of a friend, the stillness of morning, the pages of His word. You begin to feel His nearness in ways that words can't explain, a warmth in the middle of a cold season, a whisper in the silence, a strength that rises when yours runs out. You no longer pray just to ask for things. You pray because you crave the sound of His voice. You worship not for blessings, but because His presence has become your breath, and that's when you know you've found it, the secret the world keeps missing. God was never meant to be an addition to your life. He is your life, the center, the source, the reason. Everything else, every gift, every success, every person flows out of that relationship. When you truly realize that He's enough, you begin to live differently. You stop fearing loss because you know you can never lose Him. You stop envying others because you're content in His timing. You stop rushing because you've found the rhythm of grace. And here's the most beautiful part. The peace that comes from knowing God is all you need doesn't make you detached. It makes you more alive. You love people more freely because you're not trying to get from them what only God can give. You give more generously because you trust the one who provides. You live with open hands because you know the giver is greater than any gift. You'll look back at the seasons of pain, the prayers that seemed unanswered, the times you thought He was silent, and you'll see it differently now. You'll see how every heartbreak was leading you closer to His heart, how every loss was actually an invitation to lean on Him more deeply, how every waiting season was a classroom for learning that His presence is the real prize. You'll whisper through tears of gratitude, "Lord, if all I ever have is You, I have everything." And you'll mean it, not because life suddenly became easy, but because your soul finally found its home. That's what happens when you put God first. You don't just find direction or peace or purpose, you find Him. And once you do, you'll never go back to living like He's an option, because when you've encountered the fullness of His love, you realize nothing else even comes close. God was all you needed all along. He always was. He always will be. And now your heart finally knows it. Conclusion: you'll never be the same. There's a quiet moment after the storm, when you look around and realize you're not the same person who first cried out for help. You've walked through fire and found grace waiting for you on the other side. You've lost things, yes, but in their place you've gained something sacred, Him. When you truly put God first, life doesn't just change, you do. Your vision shifts, your heart expands, your spirit awakens. You see purpose where you once saw pain. You see beauty in the breaking. You start to understand that even the hardest seasons were never meant to harm you, but to heal you. because now you know what it means to live surrendered. You know the peace that comes from trusting what you can't control. You've learned that obedience isn't a burden, it's freedom. You've discovered that true joy isn't found in getting everything you want, but in giving God everything you are. This is what happens when you finally stop fighting for your way and start following His. He begins to rebuild you from the inside out. He turns your wounds into wisdom, your fears into faith, your chaos into calm. And somewhere along the way you realize you don't even miss who you used to be, because the person you were without Him doesn't exist anymore. You walk differently now, not with arrogance but with assurance, not because life got easier but because your soul got anchored. You know who you belong to, you know who walks beside you, and that changes everything. People will notice it too. They'll see a light in your eyes that wasn't there before. They'll sense a peace that can't be explained. They'll hear something different in your words, not noise, but truth. Because when you carry God's presence, you don't have to announce it. You just are. And maybe you'll tell them your story. Not the polished version, but the real one. The nights you questioned. The days you almost gave up. The moments you felt unseen and unheard, but chose to keep trusting anyway. You'll tell them how putting God first didn't make life perfect. It made it possible. It made it holy. It made it worth living. If you're listening to this and your heart feels heavy, if you're tired of running, striving, pretending, this is your invitation to stop trying to figure it all out and simply let Him in. Let Him rewrite your story. Let Him reorder your priorities. Let Him become the first, the center, the only. Because once you do, you'll understand what all the saints and dreamers and faithful ones have known all along, that life without Him is just existing, but life with Him, that's where everything begins. You'll never be the same, not because you've learned more about God, but because you finally met Him, in your surrender, in your silence, in your seeking, and now His fingerprints are on your heart forever. So walk forward with peace, with courage, with holy confidence. Keep your eyes on the one who never changes, because when you truly put God first in your plans, your pain, your dreams, your days, you don't just find a better life, you find eternal life already blooming inside you. And once you've tasted that, once you've walked with Him, trusted Him, loved Him, you'll never want to go back, because now you know, when God is first, everything else finally finds its place. And that's when you'll whisper the words that change everything. Lord, take it all, my heart, my plans, my life, it's yours. And heaven will smile, because that's the moment your story truly begins. You'll never be the same.